Every search you make, every location you visit, every purchase you complete, all of it is being logged, analyzed, and in many cases, sold. The question is no longer whether your data is being collected. It's who's profiting from it.
We live in an era of surveillance capitalism, a term coined by scholar Shoshana Zuboff, where human experience is the raw material for profit. Today we debate where personal freedom ends and algorithmic intrusion begins. Welcome to Advanced English in Context. Today's episode is built around the language of privacy, technology, and civil liberties, a vocabulary set that's essential for any C1 speaker navigating news, debate, and public discourse.
The conversations you'll hear today draw on language from law, political science, and tech ethics. Don't worry if some terms are unfamiliar. We'll break them all down.
By the end, you'll be able to articulate your position on digital privacy in sophisticated, persuasive English, exactly the kind of language expected at C1 level.
Conversation 1. I'm a digital rights advocate named Alex. Sarah, you're Jamie, a tech industry spokesperson.
Alex, I understand the concern about data privacy, but let's be precise here. The data that technology companies collect is anonymized, aggregated, and used to improve services that people actively choose to use.
The anonymization argument has been thoroughly debunked by researchers at MIT and Stanford. It takes as few as 4 data points to re-identify 87% of people in a supposedly anonymous dataset.
Those are lab conditions. Real-world implementations use far more robust encryption and access controls. You're extrapolating from academic edge cases.
I'd push back on lab conditions. The Cambridge Analytica scandal involved the real-world misuse of real data from 87 million real people. That's not an edge case. That's a catastrophic precedent.
Cambridge Analytica was a data breach and misuse, not a product of normal business practices. Conflating the two undermines the credibility of your argument.
But the breach was possible precisely because the data existed and was accessible. The root problem isn't bad actors. It's the infrastructure of mass data collection that makes bad actors possible.
So your solution is to prohibit all data collection? Personalization, recommendation engines, fraud detection, all of these depend on data. You'd be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
No one is advocating for a data vacuum. What I'm arguing is that the burden of consent should be opt-in by default, not opt-out. Data minimization should be the baseline, not the exception.
An opt-in model was actually modeled in the EU under GDPR, and what we saw was significant friction that drove users away from services and increased economic inequality in digital access.
The friction argument is a design problem, not a privacy problem. Better UX can make consent flow seamless. The real question is whether companies have the incentive to invest in that design, and historically, they don't.
That's actually a point I can't easily dismiss. If the regulatory framework required genuinely transparent consent mechanisms, the industry would adapt. The problem may be less with data collection per se and more with the opacity of current practices.
Now we are getting somewhere. I'd rather have that conversation than a binary data good versus data bad argument. The nuance is in the governance, not the technology.
Let's break down key vocabulary. Debunked is an important critical thinking word. To debunk a claim is to prove it false with evidence. It's stronger than challenged, but less extreme than disproved. It implies the claim was misleading or wrong.
Extrapolating from signals a criticism of someone's reasoning. They've taken a small or specific example and drawn overly broad conclusions. This is a useful debating move. You're extrapolating from a single case study.
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater, a vivid idiom for overcorrection. When you eliminate a problem by also destroying what's valuable, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. It's used across politics, business, and everyday speech.
Data minimization and opt-in by default are both technical terms now entering general use. In any conversation about privacy, technology, or regulation at C1 level, you should be comfortable using and explaining them.
Conversation 2, a more personal scenario. Two friends discuss a new app that tracks location and health data in exchange for insurance discounts.
Have you tried that new insurance app? I got it last month. I've saved $60 already just by letting it track my daily steps and driving patterns.
I looked into it and decided against it. I know it sounds paranoid, but I'm not comfortable with a corporation having a continuous feed of my physical movements and health metrics.
I get that, but they're legally bound by privacy regulations. What's the worst they can do with the fact that I walk 8,000 steps a day?
In isolation? Probably nothing alarming. But data rarely stays in isolation. They can sell it to third parties, use it to raise your premium if your activity declines, or have it subpoenaed in a legal case.
You've clearly thought about this more than I have. I suppose I skimmed the terms of service, which is probably exactly what they're counting on.
The whole model is predicated on information asymmetry. They know exactly what rights you're signing away, and you don't. That's not a fair exchange, even if the $60 feels real.
Okay, you've given me something to think about. I'm not going to delete it tonight, but I'll actually read what I agreed to, and maybe think twice before adding the health monitoring module.
That's all I'm asking. The issue isn't the technology. It's making informed choices rather than being nudged into surveillance by a $60 discount.
From the second conversation, information asymmetry, this economics term describes when one side in a transaction knows far more than the other. It's central to debates about consumer rights, healthcare, and digital contracts.
Predicated on means based on or built upon. The whole model is predicated on information asymmetry. The word predicated elevates the register significantly. It's common in academic and legal English.
Nudged into comes from behavioral economics. A nudge is a subtle design choice that pushes people towards certain behaviors without explicitly requiring them. Here it's used critically. The discount is a nudge into accepting surveillance.
And subpoenaed, a legal term meaning legally compelled to produce evidence. In everyday language, you can say the data could be used in court, but using subpoenaed signals a high level of legal literacy. Slow repeat. First, the root problem isn't bad actors. It's the infrastructure of mass data collection that makes bad actors possible.
Key structure. Two-part sentence with a dash for contrast. The root problem isn't bad actors. Pause. It's the infrastructure of mass data collection that makes bad actors possible. Full speed. The root problem isn't bad actors. It's the infrastructure of mass data collection that makes bad actors possible.
Second phrase. The whole model is predicated on information asymmetry. Stress. Predicated 4 syllables. Information asymmetry. Stress the third syllable in both words.
Slow. The whole model is predicated on information asymmetry. Now at natural pace. The whole model is predicated on information asymmetry.
Final. The nuance is in the governance, not the technology. A memorable phrase that you can adapt to many debates. The nuance is in the regulation, not the product. The nuance is in the implementation, not the idea. Try it.
Quiz time. What does opt-in by default mean? A. You are automatically enrolled unless you say no. B. You must actively agree before your data is collected. Or C. The system opts out on your behalf.
Answer B. Opt-in by default means you must actively consent before data collection begins. The opposite is opt-out, where you're enrolled automatically and must actively choose to leave.
Second question. When Alex said Jamie was extrapolating from academic edge cases, what was the criticism? A. Jamie was quoting sources incorrectly. B. Jamie was drawing overly broad conclusions from specific examples. Or C. Jamie was ignoring academic research.
Answer B. To extrapolate from edge cases means to generalize from unusual or extreme examples, a logical weakness in an argument. Naming this tactic is a sophisticated debating move.
Digital privacy is one of the defining debates of our era. The language to engage with it thoughtfully, not reactively, is what today's episode has given you.
Subscribe, leave your thoughts on digital privacy in the comments, and join us next time when we talk about making your case for a promotion. English 061, see you there.